It's been over a year since my first video that I made sometime in mid-July in 2024, talking about Fortnite's new direction. And by new direction, I mean mainly the metaverse era of Fortnite. Fortnite's been through multiple eras in time. The entirety of Chapter 1 being that OG era, when everything was very simple and the game was still evolving and coming out of its early access form. Chapter 2 really kept a lot of the lore and the gameplay the same, continuing again to build on the concepts of both the lore and gameplay in the world of Fortnite. Chapter 3 is more of the beginning of the modern era with more collabs, more wacky items, the beginning of the 1 year long chapters with different loopholes. That era in Chapter 4, it's basically just Chapter 4, where we were transitioning from finishing up and making Donald Mustard's story more of a background thing and introducing a new storyline with the end of OG, kind of resetting the timeline and creating the Omniverse instead. Now, the video in which I made was critiquing this metaverse era, and my main points with that video being that Epic Games shifting from making a BR game, the thing that we were all interested in and they were building for several years, to be this metaverse Robloxy like thing is killing the game. Now, I wanted to come back because it's been over a year since that video and a lot has changed. Some for the good, some less good, and some I have differing opinions about. I wanted to take a look at some of my points and really just build upon what I said before, but with the new hindsight that we've been given now. Also, let's get rid of this weird Roblox gameplay in the back. It was fine for the first video, but let's keep things on script with some Fortnite gameplay. Alright, let's begin. So for this first part, we're going to divide everything up into parts like we did in the first video. The mainly two different topics I want to talk about. The first and most important in my opinion would be the metaverse era and how that's doing. Now, I've got quite a few opinions about the metaverse era. Do I think the metaverse era is bad? No. I don't think it's killing Fortnite. Fortnite's doing pretty well, and Chapter 6 has actually been an insane improvement from Chapter 5 from gameplay standpoints, the story, which we'll talk about later, and how they handle the metaverse era of Fortnite. Now, I think the reason I was very critical of this era of Fortnite was originally because I made that video when we were in the middle of Fortnite Wrecked, which is a very, very controversial split time for Fortnite, and that maybe could have amplified my negative opinions on the metaverse era. And part of the reason I may have thought that Wrecked was a disaster is because of the metaverse era. I think it was just poor planning from Epic Games. Anyways. So, like I mentioned before, Chapter 6 gave us, like Chapter 5, a bunch of new game modes to work with. However, a big trend was immediately noticeable. Once Chapter 5 released, and by the beginning of 2025, we had Fortnite OG, Ballistic, and another Lego mode. Now, OG and Ballistic I was very excited for because it was now obvious that Epic Games had shifted their focus from adding other gameplay styles to Fortnite and are sticking to the gun game BR realm of things. Because I think something that I've noticed, if we just take a look at the numbers on all of these different game modes we have now, we got Reload last year, OG Fortnite, Ballistic, and Blitz this year, and those other Lego game modes. Now, if you take a look, Reload, OG, and Blitz are the ones doing the best. So I think Epic Games took a 180 turn in how they handled the metaverse by adding more BR derivative game modes because those intrigue the most players. As for the other game modes, the problem with these game modes is that Epic Games is simply just doing too much with these things. Basically, it goes as follows. Epic Games wants to make this new Find It in Fortnite motto, where you can play any game you possibly could imagine in Fortnite. The problem is that they already had this set up with Creative 2.0. That's what Creative 2.0 was meant to be, a way to add other games to Fortnite. Now, what I don't understand is why Epic Games thought, okay, let's try and add Creative 2.0 to allow other people to make other game modes in Fortnite. But then we're going to make our own game modes, which really just divides up the teams into smaller teams for specific game modes, which means some game modes get more attention than others. So the ones that get left behind, like Rocket Racing, Lego for like Ever, and Ballistic, just end up losing player counts. So the Metaverse era isn't bad, which is why I kind of do but kind of don't agree with what I said in the previous video about how the Metaverse era is this negative thing for the game because it bloats the player counts or whatever. I think that we can have other game modes, but I think the other IPs in the game could have been put into creative. The Lego modes could have been a Creative 2.0 feature instead of requiring 3 different Epic-made experiences. The player count feels bloated because Creative 2.0 was not given the proper potential that it has. They've tried by adding these different tools to Creative 2.0, but I think it would have been better to give these other game experiences to Creative 2.0 for other people to use instead of Epic Games having to work on these different modes that are getting low player counts. I think that's all I really wanted to say. Because if I go on a tangent about why the other IPs don't work, or why OG fell off, or all those things, this would be a video way too long. So we just gotta move on. The other thing I've noticed for a while, and the other half of the video, was that Epic Games has shifted their focus from BR. Not only BR from a gameplay standpoint, but from a lore standpoint. My main point with last year's video is that Epic Games had Fortnite be such a big success, not only because of how innovative it was. They made the building system with BR, they added the battle passes, the lore, the live events, all of that made Fortnite special and still does. But changing that to make this faulty metaverse system was something I was very afraid of. Now, Chapter 5 did have mini events, but they weren't that impactful. They did help set up the next season, but there was definitely a lot of wasted potential. A lot of characters we see for one season and then never again. Not enough characters to care about. You see, the Chapter 5 storyline excluded all Chapter 1 through 4 story and was really just its own thing. And I think that's part of the reason why it just didn't work. But with Chapter 6, they mentioned stuff like the 0 point. They brought back actual live events. We had mini events, but we also had real live events with the Death Star sabotage and that Kraken event thingy. It wasn't that good. It was just like the Doom event all over again, unfortunately. So how do we keep it from falling apart? I think what would also help is that obviously improving the Metaverse era means that we can maybe get the live event team back, and we can actually get proper live events. Now, OG is going to replay all of its live events from Chapter 1, which is super exciting, and they're trying to connect the OG mode, Blitz, Reload, and BR all together, which I think is amazing. I think that's a really cool idea. I think successfully reintroducing the 7 and reintroducing old characters alongside these new characters would be very helpful. I think that less collab-oriented seasons would also help, since Chapter 5 had an entire Marvel season as its conclusion. Chapter 6 had a collab season in the form of the Star Wars season, but it didn't stick around long enough to really embed itself in the chapter's lore. It was just kind of this midway connector trying to get Lawless to the super season. So I think the game overall is in a way better spot than before. And there was some things I was wrong about. I thought that they would quit the metaverse idea. Mason in the original video also thought that Epic Games was going to keep adding OG modes, but that only happened one extra time with actual OG. But OG's player counts were not as big as either of us expected because, well, there's problems that plagued that mode already. But just the fact that that didn't happen was a big shocker to both of us. And I think they're heading in a better direction. But there are some changes that they need to make to their both metaverse era and how they deal with the live event system if they want to keep it on the up and up, and if they want to keep improving upon it. That's really all I have to say about that. There's not much more to it. There's not much more I think they can do outside of what they're doing right now. But I'd say Fortnite now is in a way better direction and in a better spot than it was before.